What we are going to start with today is yoga, which is called Pranayama yoga, or sometimes just about niyamas. And the meaning of it is to use breathing movements, all those breathing movements that we do for our self-improvement, and ultimately for self-knowledge. So each of us is breathing. It is claimed that on average in 24 hours, we do something about 21,600 breaths and exhalations. And thanks to this we live with you. But yoga gives some other details on this score. Modern science, in general, tends to the point of view that we need breathing in order to enrich the blood with oxygen. And so to speak, exhale carbon dioxide, maybe some other metabolic products. Yoga claims that in addition to this, there is a very mysterious, very powerful mechanism for attracting prana in the breath. Here in yoga, such a concept as prana is introduced. What is it? This is a complex concept of prana. Sometimes it is translated as energy, sometimes it is translated as vital energy. In more serious treatises, it is translated as a ray that connects our self with our body. And this ray manifests itself both as energy and as consciousness. But, one way or another, prana. This is what keeps us alive. Prana. This is what develops our body. Prana is what builds our body. Prana is what heals wounds. Prana is what, so to speak, keeps us in good health. And as soon as the thread of prana is cut for one reason or another, well, for example, at the moment of natural death, we live there to an advanced age, or violent death. So when we then, because of our bad karma, die earlier than it should have been, then the thread of the brain breaks, and the person actually dies instantly. Without breathing, we can last with you for 5 minutes. Without a brain, we will not last a second. That's such an interesting yoga. And the most interesting thing is that the mechanism of attracting this mysterious prana is very rigidly connected with respiratory movements. Here we are all doing a breathing movement, and, according to yoga, this impulse, a wave-like impulse, is somehow transmitted to the structure of our nerves, nerve tissue. And then the next step, this impulse is transmitted to our subtle structures. Let me remind you, thin structures. These are our bodies, made of matter, but only very fine matter, which modern science, fortunately or unfortunately, has not yet discovered. That is, in addition to our physical body, yoga claims that we have subtle bodies. And this breathing impulse from the gross physical body passes into the impulse of the subtle body, which means that this impulse of the subtle body attracts another portion of prana. As soon as the portion of prana has come, it means that we feel good. If there is an excess of prana, we are healthy, happy, cheerful, full of energy. We are creatively active, and we do not know sadness. If prana is for some reason, it means that the vaccine is shrinking. We are pessimistic. We are sick. Nothing pleases us. We are bored. We are sad. We are sluggish. We are apathetic. Any minor damage, therefore, leads to very serious diseases. That is, the difference is only one thing: a lot of prana, a lot of resistance. A person is, as they say, active. There is not enough prana. Resistance is small, a person tends to be passive, so, in general, apathetic. That is, prana is the energy that's actually what supports our life. Now a few words from the theory. And how does prana combine with the energy that we get from food? Well, here we are eating with you. If we eat well, then everything is fine. As soon as we get a little hungry, our arms and legs give way. We can't work properly with you. So prana is a very tricky energy. Prana governs. A small flow of prana controls the large flows of energy that we receive from ordinary food. That is, here is my favorite comparison always. There is such a thing as a manager. In any enterprise, there is a manager. On the one hand, there are a lot of employees who can do their task, but a step to the left, a step to the right. They just don't know what to do. Workers at the factory. On the other hand, there are designers there, all sorts of analytical departments where people can think everything through. But they will never be at the machine themselves. And in any enterprise, in any firm, there is such a layer of managers who connect two of these, so to speak, these two groups of people. And without them, any enterprise falls apart. This is similar to prana in our body. It, so to speak, supports both our energy and our consciousness, and it develops our body and heals. And if there is any damage, then first of all the soprano mobilizes there to patch up the holes, and then everything is fine. So to speak, the metabolism is restored, and everything goes according to plan. In general, this is a fairly universal thing. A universal thing. And life is impossible without it. So it turns out that if you learn to control the delay in breathing air, exhaling, in a special way, we gain control over prana and learn to extract it more and more. That is, accordingly, a yogi who has mastered pranayama yoga attracts more and more prana. His vital activity increases, the body's resistance increases, and intellectual abilities grow dramatically. Why? Because if there is a lot of energy, the mind begins to work in a completely different way. That is, some positive ones. Some positive aspects form a large number of brains. But, unfortunately, not everything is so simple in this yoga. And simply performing mechanical in-breaths and exhalations will not lead us to mastering pranayama yoga. There is such a principle of harmony in yoga. In pranayama yoga, this principle is twice as strong, or I don't know, squared stronger. In other words, in order to learn to attract more and more prana, we must, first of all, learn to breathe harmoniously. And then feel that behind each harmonious inhale and exhale, there is a reaction, a nervous reaction, a harmonic nervous reaction, that goes into the field of sensations, into the field of something like this on facets. On the verge. In other words, or in terms of yoga, we must find a link between the gross physical body and the subtle body. According to yoga theory, the link between our gross body and the subtle body is prana. It opens up to us and our consciousness as a sensation. If we found these feelings inside ourselves, sometimes very vague, sometimes such nervous sensations. Now, if we have caught, as yogs say in our school, we have caught prana by the tail, that's only in this sense. It is possible to strengthen actions, which means inhaling and exhaling, delays, so to speak, and force such breathing movements. If this is not the case, it is useless to practice pranayama yoga. And experience shows that more or less people master hatha yoga. Well, fast, slow. One such moment. Only a few people master about niyama yoga for the simple reason that purely mechanistic exercise without understanding the essence of what is being done does not lead to pranayama yoga and does not lead to an increase in prana. Moreover, it leads to trouble. Here some kind of shortness of breath begins. Somehow I want to, well, somehow it's uncomfortable in the field of breathing, a person begins to feel. And all attempts to force this process lead to absolutely such not funny consequences. Somewhere after 2 weeks of intensive practice, a burning sensation begins throughout the body. Sleep is completely upset in the body. The person becomes quite nervous. In general, there is a whole big range of troubles. A person simply throws a hand-typed yama yoga and leaves nada. So this is one of the biggest snags about Nayama Yuga. It's very hard to master. The reasons why it is difficult to master, first of all, oddly enough, of a moral nature. We have to give up some patterns of behavior in our lives. It means that these patterns, despite the fact that at some certain stage of our life they helped us, at another stage of life, they can harm us very much. But here in particular is our attempt to run, as they say, to run ahead of the locomotive. That is, to force it by all means. That is, there are people like this, they are very strong-willed. Here he has appointed a time for himself, there in 2 weeks, there to master such a pose there, so he forces himself in every possible way. And he really makes the body stretch there. But stretching the body is not yoga. This is, in general, a kind of acrobatics. That is, in the circus there and so on, people bend there, they tie 5 knots, but they cannot be called yoga. Again, holding your breath. Swimmers are submariners, which means that in these submarines, the poor are taught in every possible way, sometimes in very brutal ways. So to speak, holding their breath. They can really hold their breath for quite decent, so to speak, periods of time. And, so to speak, it gives them a lot. They become hardy, strong, so to speak, very strong-willed people, but, unfortunately, this little harmonious transition moment, as a rule, is lost, and the next step that yoga gives, unfortunately, is not acquired there either. In other words, it is the management of more subtle psychic energies. So, all of this, however strange it may seem, is embedded in the stereotype of our behavior. If we are careful, if we are sane, if, on the one hand, we are very determined and consistent in our practice, but on the other hand, it's time to stop. That's how once harmony started to get lost, that's it, stop. This, unfortunately, is very difficult to do, because we all, like to go snoring somewhere. Usually such a person says, "No, I will not do these simple exercises. Give me more complicated ones. I'm going to do a lot of them, there, for 3 hours a day." Now, if such people come to me and say, this is what they want to learn about Nayama in this way, I immediately honestly and frankly say, I can't teach you. In principle, I can't. Why? Because, numerous experiences show that this impulse is enough. One more time. 2 weeks, a month maximum. That is, we must be careful, gentle, attentive, somewhere tender to ourselves. And of course, we have to get along with the outside world. So, this is the first such danger, it's overheating of the body. Yes, we attract a lot of prana at first, yes, we are on the rise, but the body overheats. Like a car that runs at high revs. Sometimes here I am. As there was some kind of traffic jam, and there the cars begin to boil. I do not know what they have. The radiator is boiling there. Yes, that's exactly the same way a person begins to boil. It seems like there is a lot of prana, like the activity has increased, but the body cannot cope. That is, for a week or 2 or 3, yes, and then everything is all ready. So here in this sense, it is necessary to approach pranayama very gradually, very carefully, decisively, yes, but with harmony, the utmost harmony. This is the first such moment at which all students of the Nayama Yuga stumble. And finally, the second point, completely not obvious. Suddenly, the way of life begins to change. Suddenly, conflicts begin to be in the family, with friends, if so to speak. The first stage is past. At work, it means that there is something starting to sparkle with your beloved girl or with your beloved young man. Sparkle with terrible force. Here, oddly enough, this is the second such group of such obstacles, which stands again on the study of pranayama. Why? The energy is coming and everything is where it was. Some, if you like, flaws starts. Even purely psychically, it begins to manifest itself. A person becomes very irritable, everything interferes with him, sharp light, sharp sound. Everything is like this with a knife, as they say, according to the heart. That's where the door creaked somewhere, and he shuddered right away. The neuropsychic device is very refined. And, unfortunately, there is nothing to be done about it. This period in pranayama must, as it is again said in our school, crawl over. You know, there are some things that we jump over, cross over, fly over. But, unfortunately, because of our bad karma, there are such periods in life that we crawl over. And thank God, because it's better this way than nothing. So, oddly enough, this begins to result in some kind of friction with the outside world. Moreover, the more a person begins to engage, the more prana, the more he becomes very, very sensitive, insanely sensitive. And this is the second serious danger, which, in general, poses about nayama. Promotion about nayama on not. Well, there are still very, very many factors that would certainly need to be highlighted. But we have this as a very, so to speak, overview lecture on nayama. Now a few words on the theory. According to the theory, how does this process happen in general? So then, we have our self, the higher self. It is associated with our bodies, with our gross physical body, with our subtle body, and with our so-called physical body. All these three bodies are as if inserted into each other, like nesting dolls. And they are interconnected with each other with glue. And this glue is just right. In other words, prana like glue connects our gross body with our subtle structures. Here we are going to the subway, worrying about something there, thinking about ourselves there, thinking about plans there. In fact, in this sense, we are, as it were, concentrated in our subtle body. Or we sleep, let's say we have dreams. We see ourselves in a subtle body. The rough body has not gone anywhere. It is right next to it going to the subway. But we seem to forget about this body for a moment. And any nervous, so to speak, well, like some kind of anxiety, again, prana connects the subtle and gross body, begins to manifest itself on the gross physical body. And we, so to speak, because of a nervous breakdown, we have digestive problems there. There are some headaches there, fatigue, and so on, and so on. That is, you know, there is a saying, all diseases are caused by nerves, right? That is, to a certain extent, it is true. Because if we are in a bad state inside, then prana transmits this to the physical body. But it is true, the opposite is also true, that if we are engaged in prana with the help of the physical body, this excess of prana just affects our subtle body. That is why we, as a person who is engaged in pranayama, tend to be more cheerful, joyful, more inclined to help others, which means to show love, care there, and so on and so forth. I mean, here it is again. Prana is the glue that glues all of our bodies together, so it glues them together. If this glue is removed, then the gross physical body is disconnected from the subtle from the causal. And in the common people this is called that. Well, it's called death. That is, there's time and fall apart. Now then, how is Nayama Yoga mastered? So, about Nayama Yoga, as a rule, goes after the physical exercises of the Hatha Yoga asana have been studied. Hatha Yoga is static poses in which we take and stay in them in different ways, sometimes for quite a long time. So, very smoothly, the performance of Hatha Yoga leads to the fact that the internal channels through which prana circulates begin to be purified, and as if Hatha Yoga simply takes us and brings us to the next stage. That's usually in class. Here we have an expression in our classes that when you do physical exercises, do not worry about breathing. Let it take care of itself. And that's fair enough. Why? Because when doing exercises in Hatha Yoga, we intuitively begin to feel how our breathing works. If we have succeeded in Hatha Yoga in terms of physical exercises asa, it means that this inner harmony has developed very, very much. And it's enough to take just one step, and we switched to pranayama. So therefore, if in Hatha Yoga, it is harmony with one's inner feelings, then in Pranayama Yoga, it is doubly harmony. If, so to speak, we have achieved harmony at the time of performing breathing exercises. We begin to attract more energy through the senses. Well, the next steps begin. There was dancing in the Yoga Sutras. These are the last steps, which are called Pranayama. This is pulling the senses out of objects from. Pulling the senses out of the senses. That is, we stop seeing, hearing, feeling, and being aware. We sort of pull ourselves out of our eyes, out of our ears, out of everything. This is exactly how they usually say. Here the yogi sits, sees nothing, hears nothing. This is called the step brothers ha. And finally, the last steps, which together are called upa-anjali with a pit. This is the concentration of our mind incrementally, which in its greatest peak leads to what is called samadhi. So, if we don't have enough prana, we will have a very hard time focusing our mind on anything. But if there is a lot of prana, then it is quite easy to direct attention to one or another object or phenomenon and achieve a state. Well, if not samadhi, then a state of extreme